Okay, hello everyone. Hi, thanks for coming along. So I'm here today to talk to you about retail PPC. My title is Retail PPC is Hard. We're a PPC agency, we do PPC for a number of different sectors, but retail really is the toughest sector that you can work in, so good luck. Just to give you a bit of background, so I suppose before I go into this, just to tell you a bit more about myself and the company I work for. So my name's Pete, I work for Search Laboratory. We're a global PPC and SEO company. So we work with a number of big retail brands across the globe, really. We've taken a real focus in retail in the last few years because we've found that a lot of the techniques that we've been implementing have worked really, really well in the retail sector. So that's kind of where we are as a company. I head up the PPC team there, so please feel free to reach out to me or anyone on the team if you've got any questions. Just in terms of a bit of background to search and PPC and why it's important. So this graph charts the annual number of searches on Google. So you can see that year on year, this number has been growing for a number of years. Actually, 2014 versus 2013, it stayed about the same. So whilst it has been growing, that growth has stopped a little bit, but that's largely because Bing and other search engines have actually started growing as well. So search is growing massively. So as a marketing channel, it therefore does become more important year on year for every year that we're doing this. Within retail PPC as well, the percentage of clicks on Google that are actually going to paid search as opposed to organic is also increasing year on year. So if we look back to 2009, we were getting about 27% of clicks were going to paid ads on Google. Now, especially if you include the PLA data on that, the Google shopping data, it's around 34%. So that's big increases in terms of how that market has shifted. In terms of which positions are important, so again, looking historically, it used to be that position 1 to 3 wasn't as important as it is now. So position 1 to 3 now counts for about 22% of all searches. So they're typically the top positions above the natural search results. So this is largely down to some changes that Google have made and the way the page is laid out, which I'll touch on in a second. I'm not here to tell you that you need to be in those top 3 positions all the time. That's what Google will tell you. But the way we see it is position is really a side effect or an impact of what you're willing to pay for a click. So if you're calculating the right amount to pay for a click, then that should be the profitable amount, and it doesn't actually matter where on the page you are showing. In terms of how the search results pages have looked, so I've just taken a snapshot here. So this is a search for men's shirts in 2010 and more recently. In 2010, you can see actually, if I overlay that, only quite a small section at the top of that page is paid search, really. Whereas if you look at it now, almost that entire page, this is done on the same laptop, same screen resolution and everything. Almost that entire first page is paid search before you scroll down. So if you take an actual measurement of that, that's almost doubled in the 5 years. So that kind of tells the story of why paid is becoming bigger, why it's increasing in comparison to natural, and also why the top 3 positions are also getting a bit more traction than they ever used to. The first topic I want to properly cover is around setting targets. So whether you're managing PPC yourself or working with an agency or have got other people you're managing in-house, then setting targets is a big, very important part of PPC. And particularly in retail PPC, it's important that you set appropriate targets that people can work towards that will generate the most back for you and actually get you the most profit. So to talk through what a lot of retailers typically do, you might look at something like our average order value is £60 and our average margin is 30%. So you take these kind of factors and that gives you an average profit per sale. So multiply the order value with the average margin, gives you an average profit per sale of £18. So you might say, well, let's target a CPA of £15. We want to achieve under £18, so let's go for £15 and see how that does. The problem with this is, if you take 3 products like this, so we've got 3 products selling at 30, 60 and £90. The margin on each of these products might be different, and therefore the profit that you're making per sale on each of these is different. If you're selling an equal number of each one of those, then £15 is going to be profitable for you, but it actually means that for every single one of product A or product B that you sell, you are losing money. So working to just a generic CPA target across the board is going to lose you money. Not a good idea. So don't use CPA as a target. The only exception to that really is if you only have one product, then sure, you can use CPA, or if your conversion is download a brochure or order a catalogue or something like that. Also, just while I'm on the topic, don't focus on number of clicks, on number of conversions or anything like that. They're not the metrics that are going to make you the most profit. What's going to make you the most profit is some of the other metrics that I'm going to talk about. So the next one that a lot of people look at is ROI or ROAS, return on ad spend, or cost of sale. They're all essentially the same metric, just kind of in different ways. For this, you might look at something like average margin 30%. So using that data that we did before, average margin was 30%. So we might target a cost of sale of 25%. So again, we want to come in under that number, cost of sale. So what that means is essentially it's a return on ad spend of 400%. So for every £1 you're spending, you're getting £4 back. Again, there's issues with this though. So if I bring this table up again, you'll see that for product A and product C, that's fine because your margin is over the 25%. But actually, again, for every single one of product B that you sell, you're going to lose money there. So this can be used as a metric, but I would say only really use it if you have a static margin. So if you can say every single one of our products sells with a 30% margin, then use this as a metric. That's absolutely fine. The other thing to be aware of with ROI or cost of sale is it does also encourage a lower volume of conversions as well. So any spend versus ROI graph is always going to look like this. So the more you spend, the lower the ROI is going to be. So really what that's saying is that if you're saying to your agency or saying to your team, we want to get a better ROI, then they're going to say, all right, let's go this way, let's go away from a high spend and let's try and get a bigger ROI. But ultimately, you're going to want to drive volume as well. You're going to want to get a number of sales. And if you give your agency a target of, let's get the best possible ROI and the best or the highest number of sales as well, then that's actually a conflicting goal. It's impossible to work to both of those as a goal. So you've got to take a balance somewhere in between, really. For that reason, I'm going to talk about profit. And for me, profit is really the metric that everyone in retail PPC should be working towards, really. So profit always looks a bit like this. So as you spend more, your profits are going to increase to a point, and then they're going to tail off again. So what you want to find is, firstly, what does that curve actually look like? So that curve could be any shape depending on the products you sell, the website, how good your conversion rate is, everything like that. But you want to find out what shape that is. So where is your pinpoint kind of best target spend to actually be achieving to get the most possible profit? That's known as the point of diminishing returns. So that's basically the flat part at the top of the graph. That's where you're going to be making the most money. So if you work to profit as a target, that is always going to be the best possible metric. It's always going to get you the most possible return. But you need to make sure you're giving your agency or your team the right data to actually work with this. So make sure they know what your margin is on each of your different products. Make sure they know what the cost price is of each of those products. If possible, don't cap the budget. The agency needs to be able to be flexible with that budget and find that point on the graph where you're actually going to be making the most profit. It may well be that some of you are way past the point of diminishing returns. You might be spending 200 grand a month, and actually the best point would be spending 50 grand a month. Might be that you're only spending 5 grand a month and you should be spending 20. So you need to kind of understand that, and you're only going to understand that if you do actually target profit as a metric. My next section is on valuing clicks. So really, when someone asks me what I do, when I describe myself as a PPCer, I would describe the core principle of what I do as understanding the value of every single click for our clients. So it used to be that we'd talk about understanding the value of every single keyword, but we're kind of long past that now. It used to be that we would value a keyword and we'd bid on that keyword and all was fine, but actually there's much more to it than just keywords now. We're much more thinking about individual users and behaviours, repeated behaviours that we see over and over again. So we want to think more about an individual click rather than an individual keyword. As I say, it's a core principle of PPC. In its simplest form, working out the actual click price for a keyword is a simple matter of multiplying your profit per sale by your conversion rate, and that will give you a target click price. If you're paying that amount, that is going to be the break-even amount for you, so you want to pay less than that, basically. But that gets a bit more difficult when we're looking at small amounts of data. So we need to know this conversion rate for our keywords. We need to know how everything converts, but actually, what is the conversion rate if a keyword only has one conversion from 10 clicks? Does anyone want to answer that? Tell me what the conversion rate would be. Yeah, I can see a few people muttering 10%, and that's absolutely right. You know, based on this sample, 10% of people have converted. But actually, if we look at that from a statistical point of view, mathematical point of view, we can only actually be 95% certain at this point that the conversion rate is anywhere between 0.25% and 44.5%. So right now, if we were to bid based on that data, if we were to bid based on that 10% conversion rate, then we could be so far off in either direction that it would absolutely destroy the campaign. So we need to find more data. We need to be using more data to make these decisions. So if we've got a high volume term, a broad term that is getting us loads of data, it's easy. We know what the conversion rate is. But if we've got a low volume, long tail term, that becomes much, much harder to actually operate with. But the solution is fairly simple, to be honest. We just need to look at other similar terms. So if we've got black women's dresses, then we might also want to look at, well, how do red women's dresses and white women's dresses do, and aggregate the data from various data points to give us enough data to actually make a sensible bidding decision. Additionally, there's a lot of other factors that are going to influence the conversion rate. So as I say, it's about individual clicks, not just individual keywords. So things like time of day, the season, the location someone's searching from, the device they're searching on, even things like the weather outside can impact conversion rates, previous visits to the site. All of these factors can be implemented into a PPC campaign to make sure that you are really understanding the value of every single click that you are receiving. So this is some analysis that we did on a client recently. So this is real data from a retail client. We tracked their conversion rate through the day and their average order value through the day. What we found from this is there's a huge correlation in terms of the time of day and the order values and the conversion rates. So if you look at about 4 p.m. on there, there's about a £36 average order value. There's about a 5%, just less than 5% conversion rate. That is so much more valuable as a click than one at 7 in the morning, say, when the conversion rate's about 3%, average order value is less than £25. So taking that data into account and analysing that historical data allows you to have a huge, huge impact. If you're paying the same amount throughout that entire day, then there's something going wrong there. You aren't taking advantage of every single click and every single data point. Next up, you need to look at locations as well. So there's always going to be some kind of correlation between locations and performance. So it might be that more affluent areas perform better for you. In this case, the actual correlation that we saw was it's where this brand has shops. So this brand had shops in certain areas of the country. Those were the areas that performed better for them. So for example, you can see the south of Wales, there's a few points there where they're converting really well. It's actually a Welsh brand that we're working with. They're really well known in Wales, so they're getting better conversion rates in Wales. Some of the worst converting areas are areas where the shops aren't as strong and they don't have as much brand presence. So again, by analysing this, it allows us to take that data into account and actually understand how much we pay for every click. In addition to that, there's also other ways that you need to understand the full value of every click. So firstly, thinking about paths to other channels or other campaigns that you're running. So one of the most common ones I see in retail is companies who work with Quidco or Top Cashback, those kind of companies. So people will come to your website through PPC, they'll decide they're going to convert, maybe even add something to their basket, but then they'll go away to Quidco and bounce back to your website to actually get some money off their purchase. That happens time and time again, and I can see some people laughing. Hopefully it is the case for some people in the room. But yeah, it happens time and time again, and Quidco are getting all the credit for that, but actually there's other stuff happening, other marketing campaigns that are influencing that. So make sure you take that into account. We also need to take into account things like lifetime value. So if someone registers as a new customer and buys a product, there could be a huge lifetime value there, far beyond just the initial purchase. We also need to think about things like in-store visits. So there's various ways that we can start to track this. But if you do have real-life retail stores, try and track that. Try and understand what percentage of people actually go in-store. Also try and understand cross-device. So there's tools coming out now that allow us to partly understand what happens from a cross-device point of view, but we kind of all know it's the case that people research on mobile and then buy on other devices. So make sure you're taking that into account. Additionally, referrals, brand awareness, so there could be an inflated value due to brand awareness. Micro conversion, so what I mean by this is like a newsletter sign up or a social follow or something. And also return, so all these top ones are positives, but actually if you're tracking your return rate as well, that could have a huge influence in terms of how well PPC is actually performing for you. So if 50% of your customers are returning products, then you need to take that into account to understand the value of that. Next up, I want to talk about large product inventories. So if you've got thousands or tens of thousands of SKUs, then you need to have a solution to that. It's much, much harder than if you're just selling one product. So I always like to think of a product inventory or a keyword inventory as being something like this. So we have different levels of keywords as we walk up this arrow. So from the bottom, these are the ones with the worst conversion rate, but they've also got the most volume. Loads and loads of people are searching for men's shoes, but actually not many people at that point are going to be converting. As you go further up that, men's smart shoes, men's black leather shoes, men's black Ted Baker shoes, and then a specific type of Ted Baker shoe. As you go up there, the conversion rate is going to get gradually better. So what you need to do really is focus as much effort as possible on the top end of this funnel and really understand how you can make the perfect search marketing campaign based around those kind of keywords. There's also going to be other keywords around that, and each one of these keywords or each one of these sets of keywords could be an ad group. So you can end up with thousands, tens of thousands, millions of ad groups. So for example, if I look at this from a user point of view, if I do a search for a very specific product, so a type of Ted Baker shoe, if I see an advert like this, which shows it's got that exact product in the headline, it tells me the price of that product in the advert. When I click on that advert, I know exactly what I'm buying into at that point. So that is going to maximize the possibility that someone is going to convert. I click on that advert, I get taken to a website with that exact pair of shoes, that exact price, job done. That is the maximum way you are going to increase the conversion rate. But the difficulty with this, and the reason why a lot of people don't do this, is there's a lot of questions around what happens if the price of that product changes? What happens if the product goes out of stock or comes back into stock? What happens if a product gets renamed or a URL changes, or maybe a new color gets released? All of these factors are easy to manage if you've got one product, but if you're selling tens of thousands of products, staying on top of that is very, very difficult. Similarly, from a category level, so someone might search for men's black Ted Baker shoes. If we can show them an advert, again, really caters to their needs. It tells them about the range, it tells them about the minimum price point. They can go to a website which has that exact range that we've discussed, that minimum price point, then again, that is going to be the maximum way to influence the conversion rate on that. But again, there's further questions about what happens if a minimum price changes, a minimum price item goes out of stock, there's a new cheapest item. How about if the range decreases to 4? Do we still want to boast about a range of this many products if we've only got 4 in that range? We might want to change the ad altogether at that point. So keeping all this kind of stuff up to date and actually making the most out of these granular searches is very, very difficult. And as I say, it's very easy if you've got a small set of products, but if you're selling tens of thousands of products, that is not so easy. We can have a colossal number of potential ad groups, and keeping it all up to date is very difficult. So how do we solve it? What we do as an agency, and what I'd encourage you all to look at as retailers, is an automation. So we have a piece of software that integrates with the AdWords and the Bing APIs, and it will integrate with your product feeds and actually keep all of this up to date. So traditionally what you would say in these kind of instances is, what do we want to do with an AdWords account? Do we want to stick more people on it, or do we want to have less granularity? But that's essentially just saying, do we want more operating costs, or do we want a lower return from the campaign? What we use as our third option is this automation, as I say. So this automation works around creating keywords, creating ad groups. So when it discovers new products on your feed, it will be creating an ad group for those, and it'll be creating appropriate keywords around those based on templates and rules that we set for it. It'll update everything, so when prices change, when stuff goes in and out of stock, keeps that all up to date. It's going to pause ad groups if something goes out of stock. It's going to keep it all up to date for you. It also does the bidding side of things, so it does what I've said in terms of understanding the value of these clicks based on the historical data and getting the most out of that for you. It also does some error checking, so it looks for any kind of anomalous behavior or any kind of weird product names or stuff that might not be right in the feed, and make sure we do that. And it all integrates with the ad APIs as well. So we integrate with Google on this, we integrate with Bing on this, and it ensures that all of these products can be kept up to date on a perpetual basis, really. Whenever product prices change, it's going to ping into our AdWords account, and it's going to make sure we are keeping everything up to date, basically. Next, I just wanted to quickly touch on brand bidding. So what I mean by brand bidding is bidding on your own brand name as a company. So we're Search Laboratory. Do we, don't we bid on Search Laboratory as a keyword? And it's a question that a lot of people ask. I think a lot of people like to do brand bidding because it looks really good and it always performs really well, and you can inflate your figures, and you know, there's kind of no harm in doing it from that sense. But actually, a question we get asked a lot, and a question that is a good question to ask, is does bidding on our brand actually give us any incremental value? Does it give us any value that we wouldn't have got from the natural search results or from people coming direct to the website? So really, I'd like to find out firstly, who in this room actually bids on brand terms right now? So quite a number of you. Is there anyone who actively avoids brand terms and doesn't bid on them? So one of our clients back there, funnily enough. And who here, out of those who bid on brand, who has actually tested, does it make a difference? Does it add incremental value? So good, few hands around the room, that's good to see. So to talk through our methodology on this, we've created a system that allows us to actually test on random 20-minute intervals. It will actually test, are we active or should we not be active? So every 20 minutes, we're basically flipping a coin and saying, do we want brand to be on or off for the next 20 minutes? And by doing this, it allows us to get completely fair, completely controlled results. And then from there, we can use what's known as the paid versus organic report within AdWords, which you can access if you connect up your AdWords to your Webmaster Tools data. This is just some recent results that we've seen for one of our clients. So this table shows us when both were shown, so when both organic and paid were shown, we got a click-through rate of 91%. So 91% of people were clicking on either the paid or the organic, but they were eventually going to that website. When just the organic was shown, so when the paid was switched off in these 20-minute intervals, we got a click-through rate of 73%. So there was actually a massive difference there, and probably a bigger difference than we might have expected to see in this case. But what we wanted to measure from here is, well, what is that actual impact? What is it costing you to bid on brand? So we looked at the increase in click-through rate, the extra clicks that we got as a result of bidding on brand, and the total cost associated with those clicks, and divided that up to work out the actual cost per click for a brand term. So their actual cost per click for a brand term was significantly less than 33p, but the cost per extra click that they were getting from their brand worked out at 33p due to all this data here. But really, this just illustrates the point that you want to test it. We've seen results go the other way as well, and we've seen it where actually brand is having very, very little incremental impact. So we've not bothered bidding on brand for those kind of clients. Next up, I just want to quickly touch on product listing ads and Google Shopping. I don't have anything too revolutionary here, but really just to talk through some of our top recommendations and the way you can make the most out of these. Firstly, make sure you get your title right. So the title is going to be the first thing that people see along with the image. You need to make sure that describes your product exactly, and you need to make sure you've got the most important words at the front of your title, because not very much actually shows up there. You need to make sure you're using high quality images. So I always think of an image in PLAs is essentially like an ad text in normal Google search. So that's the thing that leads to people clicking or not clicking on the product. Make sure you keep the feed up to date. So ideally, you've got a feed which links directly in with Google Merchant Center and is kind of perpetually kept up to date. If not, make sure you are updating it as regularly as you can be. Normalize the color terms. So what I mean by this is don't have items on your feed that are described as cobalt or maroon or anything like that. Describe them as grey, describe them as red, because that's what people are searching for. Calculate your bids. So much like in normal PPC, you want to understand the value of every click in this, and you can only do that by actually calculating what to bid. Split brand and non-brand. So this isn't always the most straightforward thing to do, but there is a way to do this, to split out your brand and non-brand PLA terms, just through using campaign priorities and negative keywords. You can do this. Make sure you are using negative keywords as well, so just stay on top of the traffic, make sure Google is serving the right traffic to your website. And do consider the competition, because it'll often be the case that the competition on PLAs is very different to the competition on actual normal Google search ads. So make sure you understand your competition on both aspects. Lastly, I wanted to touch on going global. So as an agency, we've helped a lot of companies to expand their search marketing overseas. We've got a lot of multilingual international people in-house who can help with doing that. Firstly, just to set the scene on this, this graph shows per country the actual percentage of retail which is online retail. And these are predicted figures. This isn't right now, but this is for 2016, what we should expect to see in terms of the percentage of retail that is online. You can see here that actually the UK is worlds ahead of the rest of the world, basically. So about 23% of online retail by next year in the UK, 23% of retail is expected to be online retail. Whereas in all of these other countries, it is like, you know, the highest of those is 11.7%, and it is much less than that in a lot of countries. So what this means really is that not only is the UK the biggest market and the best market in terms of attracting customers, but it also means it's the most competitive market, and on AdWords it has the highest click prices in retail. So for that reason, expanding overseas can often be a really good way. We've got clients who literally have click prices a tenth the cost in other countries that they do in the UK. So really worthwhile looking to do that if it's not something you're already doing. There's a few considerations and a few things to make sure you get right. So firstly, your website, you need to consider things like getting payment methods right. So for example, in Germany, they don't typically use credit cards that much online. So you need to have alternative payment methods. A lot of them just pay in cash. Similar in Russia, a lot of payments are just cash on delivery. So make sure you're considering that and researching that before opening up in other countries. Also make sure on your website you get all the form fields correct, so don't force people to type in a UK style postcode into a non-UK address field. And in terms of PPC, the main way to get this right is not to just translate an account. You don't want to just take an English account and translate it, because people search in completely different ways in other countries. They'll respond to completely different messages. And we need to make sure those ad messages and the keywords we're using do actually really, really cater to what users are looking for. And also research what your competitors are doing. So if you're entering a new territory, again, your competition is going to be very different to in the UK. So yeah, don't just translate. because that might happen. This is an actual billboard that was being shown in, I think in Japan somewhere, where they'd translated the billboard and got an error that said translate server error and used that as the billboard. People search differently and they respond to different messages. Even in English, think about this. If you're expanding to the US or South Africa or Australia, there's a lot of different ways that people actually refer to products, so make sure you're localizing for whatever market you go into. So that's it. Just to kind of clarify my key takeaways, paid search is still growing, so it's becoming increasingly important as a marketing strategy. Pick sensible targets. Please don't use a CPA target. Calculate bids and bid adjustments based on historical data and statistically significant data. Use automation, so try and do things to integrate with the API on Google to keep everything up to date. Test your brand terms, don't just blindly do them or blindly not do them, make sure you're actually testing this. Get your PLAs right, so follow the best practices. And go global, but be sensible about it and make sure you do the right thing. So that's it for me. My contact details are up there. Please feel free to ask any questions.